media. Atenenata modube, alafu Mamos. Bidilada, Mamos media. Wale nata modube, alafu Mamos. Television on the radio, la Carola. You let her get a be. More can you the winning. Multimedia, Africa, and in diaspora. Atenenata modube, alafu Mamos. Mamos media. Multimedia, Africa, what in diaspora. What another modube, alafu Mamos. Mamos media. Atenenata modube, alafu Mamos. Nene boja sangarango, oh nene. Afanabe oslode, no engo.
Good evening and welcome to today's news review. You live on Mamos Radio. I'm your host, Rohi Konatige.
Welcome to Gambia Today News Review. You're tuned into Mamos Radio on Mamos Media. It is Tuesday, 19th of January, 2021. I am NENEH with a review of the nation's top headlines. A press release from concerned Gambians against deportation. We, the concerned Gambians against deportation, are aware of the resumption of the deportation of our Gambian brothers and sisters from Europe, especially Germany, after a moratorium on deportation was announced in 2019 by the Gambia government and Germany. The start of the new trend has raised alarm from and for both families home and abroad about the deportation of our citizens who struggle through the journey of turmoil to change their livelihoods and that of their families. Since the arrival of the first 20 deportees, we have been closely monitoring the situation and also keeping in touch with our brothers and sisters in Europe on the reasons for the resumption of the deportation. The Point has headlined, FTJ says nothing can stop Jammeh from returning. Fabakary Tombong-Jatta, the interim party leader of the Opposition Alliance for Patriotic Reorientation and Construction, APRC, has stated that there is no law, power, or idea that can hold former President Yahya Jammeh from returning to the country. He also added that the return of Yahya Jammeh to the country depends on him alone and nobody else. A quote, "He is a citizen of this country and there is no law, power or idea that can hold any citizen of this country not to come back to the country. Former President Jammeh is waiting for the right time to return to the country," unquote. The Standard has also headlined, "Only Jammeh can decide when to return, FTJ." The APRC leader Fabakary Tombong-Jatta has said exiled former leader Yahya Jammeh will decide when to come back, and he could be here as early as next week. Jammeh went into exile in Equatorial Guinea in 2017 after his rejection of the 2016 December presidential election results, ensued a political impasse which led to deployment of regional troops to force him out. Quote, "Jammeh's return will entirely depend on him to decide. He is a son of this country and there is no law, power or whatsoever that would deny him from returning. He's just waiting for the right time. Whether they will allow him to come or not, that's not important to us. So people should not be worried about his return. He has a right to return to the country, unquote, FTG said in a Star FM interview to be aired this morning. Sheikh Omar Jeng says Minister Yankuba Sonko requested for Solo Sandeng's transfer to NIA. A former deputy director of operations at the NIA testified on Monday that current Minister of Interior Yankuba Sonko was the one who instructed officers to take Solo Sandeng and 4 others to the NIA headquarters in Banjul following their arrests on the 14th of April 2016. Sheikh Omar Jeng Sajeng stated this while under cross-examination on Monday, 18th of January 2021, before Justice Okumba Sila Kamara of the Banjul High Court. The resident of Carnifing is the 3rd accused person in the ongoing criminal trial involving 6 other persons. They are charged with 25 counts of criminal offences including murder, torture, conspiracy, and accessory after the fact of murder. Listeners, that was this evening's news headlines. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you, Nene, for today's news review. Listeners, you live on Mamos Radio. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back. Good evening. I'm your host, Rohi Konatege. On today's news review, Mamos Radio takes a look at the international news making a splash in national newspapers in the United Kingdom and the United States. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Good evening, listeners. I am your presenter, Sainab Njaiba. Thank you for joining me on Mamos Radio as I take a look at the headlines on the front pages of the UK's national newspapers this Tuesday. A coroner has warned smart motorways present an ongoing risk of future deaths as he ruled the lack of a hard shoulder contributed to 2 drivers dying on the M1, reports the Daily Mail. The Prime Minister is considering delaying an end to the £20 a week boost to universal credit, which was introduced last year to help families cope during the pandemic, reports the Eye. COVID jabs will be diverted to areas falling behind on vaccinating the over 80s amid concerns about regional disparities in the program, claims the Times. A seriously ill 80-year-old girl with a rare blood disorder has been given a vital transplant after another donor backed out at the last minute and her parents then searched for a new hero, reports the Daily Mirror. TV star Jeremy Clarkson has packed outraged after telling families to stop complaining about the poor quality of free food parcels, according to the Daily Star. Experts and politicians have said people in high-risk minority ethnic groups must be prioritized for COVID immunizations, alongside a targeted publicity campaign, writes The Guardian. Boris Johnson has warned the country faces a precarious situation despite the swift vaccination rollout, but vowed things will look very different by spring, reports the Daily Express. Government scientists have warned ministers that millions of people are likely to start ignoring COVID restrictions once they have been vaccinated, reports the Daily Telegraph. The Sun leads with its Jobs Army campaign, which has passed its target of recruiting 50,000 volunteers to help with the UK's COVID vaccination program. Metro reports that a surge in software used to spy on staff working from home during the pandemic has led to calls for new laws against unscrupulous bosses. Thank you, listeners. That was the UK national newspaper's headlines. Please stay tuned after the break. We take a more detailed look at the front pages of the Daily Mirror and the... Welcome back, listeners. Let's take a close look at the front page of the Daily Mirror, which leads with the headline, "At last, something to smile about." There is something to smile about amid all of the virus gloom, says the Daily Mirror, as it reports an 8-year-old girl has had a life-saving stem cell transplant. All hope seemed to have been lost for Evie Hudson after a donor had backed out, it adds. The seriously ill girl with a rare blood disorder had been given a vital transplant at the last minute after her parents had to search for a new hero, the paper reports. Pictured on the front page is a smiling Evie as she recovers in hospital. Turn to page 9 for the full story. Also featured on the front page of the Daily Mirror are pictures of Rebecca Vardy and Colin Rooney with the caption, "Wags at War, head for final face-off." The paper reports on Rebecca Vardy's libel claim against Colin Rooney. Turn to page 11 for details of that report. Listeners, we now take a look at the front page of the Metro, which leads with the headline, "Work from Home Spies Alert." 1 in 5 farms now linked to snooping on staff. Unions call for laws to block intrusive employers. The Metro leads on a warning from unions that there has been a surge in secret software used to spy on staff working from home in the pandemic. The paper says there are calls for new laws against unscrupulous bosses who unfairly punish staff deemed to be slacking when they are caring for children or sick relatives. That story continues on page 4. Also on the front page is a picture of the Prime Minister Boris Johnson, captioned "The PPE Prime Minister." The Prime Minister is pictured wearing a full protective suit as he visits an Oxford vaccine laboratory. That is a report on the coronavirus crisis, and details of that can be read on page 5. Thank you, listeners. That was the UK National Newspaper's Front Pages review with me, Zainab Njaiba. Stay tuned to Mamos Radio for the rest of our news program. Do have a good evening.
We'll be back with the Mandinka News with Lamin Marong.
Assalamu alaikum badingol mbali kontonna tulunal kontondimala anal badima lami maron dol kay kiyam sam felen dunta abela makan Mamos radi bumbala kondalta ka kibaro mi futandale wati ben kana wole sindalla be janin kadum fonsi ka fodu tentu ani molu men ya lonko en kono tride kam la kafuba am la anina dokulan be Gambia bantala ba folay ala barka baka la doku kendola se kibaro ko folo futandal ma janin kadum kibaro nyi famo kono ni watolo e ko menketa kidapu fatiti comme yalon ko comedian olan Gambia afanan yala sulo itandi akalafta kake president candidate to in quarter final anu fanan GRA me yalon ko wala keda Gambia Tax Authority kafuba me yalon ko wala ka lempo kanin e ko ni watolo kodo kanin me yalon ko mola kala tax ni menjo ya kanendo menke atara for 11 billion Gambian na kodo asiata wati anu fanan ya baro fanan yamari pour asi fereke pour ka ekomok sojarul men be jang prasi yolu yamfe Gambia sojarul sindi noto biring ngalon ko sign be tembo men to president membe je sign amanke kunu ya jamal wato so ya dani prasi falendro ke ay Gambia sojarul ta wala kala kantal lati genabita ekomok la sojarul tala mbo ke baro fanan futandalma anu fanan ye masakunda ikobe fero lande kane ka jube men kedan estate company to meni ya lonko ka korda wafo ka Gambia ko be fero la kan pour ka jiben ila doku nyalo pour ka falendi no nyamen kan to wato mo jamale la wosi itandi iko tapale ya membe ke kan ni na keneku wafiro la Gambia bo kibaro fanan futalam ni semen ketro ngadun kibaro nyi fango kumokro menketa comedianoti menketa kitabu fati be yalon ko comedian wala Gambia andum fanan mola me yalon ko darajeta bake abota jara mafon la menketa loveri wajinton e ko abala kontano anala sulo akwa be hamela pour une carte finale membe gala 2021 pour kalo ka ke president candidate woti ani Mamos la kibarale ka chake telefono to ate Mr Fati anyim banke ako ngakano menka Gambia la banko nyinna wala ya tinna purkalo ka jeko si molu fasano nyamen anu purka Gambia banko ka dema no nyamen ngina ya tinna akadanya suloti purkalo purkaje nga president ya sirawni purka nyine ade kitabu ngalonko mola ngalanka adarjata bake anu ngala patinyin to wala Progressive People Party PDP anu ako ayalone Gambia banko e sulo men kanin anu ngabe hamela la purke wuraka dokoke purka hadama dum la balunya andi la nyanto ka sonende nyamen Gambia banko nyin kan kibar bunna men safe wala mu Mamos la media te JRA me alon ko Gambia kafuba membe loring pour ka kanendro ke douanolu waranka kanendro ke lempulu la molka taxi menjo e ko ya kanendro nyi menke nyi sango nyi kono e atata la mensiata Gambia kodo $11 billion e ko ngalon ne ko nyi kuran jawbe kere menke da COVID-19 ti ay ku jamal ko le andi Gambia banko kan boro nyawnyang e do ko nyi menke pour ka kunendro ke ka kodi kanengo nyinke me yalon ko e kodo men kanen asiata Gambia kodo 11 billion Gambia kodoti ako ngalon ne ko nyi watulu waran watulu men tambita ka kanen do nyi menke ngalona ka futa aka hapuja len ka men kanin anu ngate menke de la nyaton koti ay kachanyi ke anu point la newspaper nyi arjuma tambila a menke ta ko esa jaloti ako ye sasile pour ka kanen do nyi ke anu ka men kanin akatale Gambia kodo nun billion tan million keme say million tan say nin say wuli keme warawla an warawla dalasi tan say anin tan nanin kononto akoy ko la kanin anun niya jiben o sango anin yin sango e kan dro menke atata kanya Gambia kodo billion tan anin killing million keme say anin tawrawla wuli keme kononto mo anin lulu wuli tan woro anin bududu tan kononto anin lulu ya wala kanin yin sango yin 2020 sango yin men tambida akoni yajibe tambeda hapo men lafata kan atata Gambia kodo billion killing million keme fula tan anin kononto wuli keme tan nani worowula dalasi keme fula tan anin woro anin bududu tan sey anin fula me ya lonko wala lafata e kakanin droni menke akoni nata jibe nin keme mu isafa lafata sidula tan anin worowula ko e hamo menke anin men lafata kan point la newspaper wala kibaro nyin safe anun president Barrow fani nata yamari menketa Mohamed Lamin Sidat Job mola me yalon ko ay hormo sodo bake anu nana keta nu ministre le nu membe maralim bant la bankulu jokunyo ayala anu nana keta ambassador fanantele nu akoy ngere suloti be president Barrow ba yamarla pour asifero ke Gambia la contrôler menketa sojarolti pour asita ay ekomok ñu nembe jeden prayawul bonde ko ngalon ne nyin keta 2017 sango nyin kono e ko ngalon ne mamang men do man keta no brinata ka nyatum ko falingo nyin kenu me alon ko mentata do malundroje malarula nun sanyimo anu fula pour kana bondi anu ngalon ne o maral watu aketa no wamen keta yaya jamete akonyin keda nyosaba molungu de fire lokun nyunta biring carte fa onyin keda 2016 sango nyin kono o kola len inata te ya jam biraka de bondila afrika la sojarulu nada kaf nyoma pour kana ka forcer to bondi pour ka masakunda sinde men ya lonko mole carte fa wala pour ayke president ti banko kamen keda president barote an kibar bunda men safa wala mo standard la newspaper te adun Gambia masakunda e ko fana ye mulu lahidile e ko be fero lande kanne pour kaji ko menkeren estate company te waran estate sector me ya lonko wolen mo kafubolite waran company te mellota pour ka kordal wafe muluma e ko fero le be lande kanne pour kaji be luwaju mala tamandila adu mole la wosida yitandile ko be tapale anyi membe kekan pour nina da korda wafo la Gambia banko nyin kan e ko nyum fanna la nina ta koda wa fo la dulala mi ya lonko man je korsi bake luwa membe je amang sembo soto bake wala atine la fraka korsi roke ana Musa Baji mi ya lonko atleketa deputy permanent secretary la normal kote ako member minister member maralin banko la kunya la game banko nyin kan anu ayin foko ye dokulu be wala ke kan be intembo nyi mento pour ka silo landi anim labulu landi me ya lonko wala be korsuro kala ni nata korda sangola wan korda wafo la game banko kan ata Mr. Baja ko ngaji kiko jani ba fanyin April karoni menkana afadula in 2021 kono e be luwal bondilan me ya lonko abe korsiro kelale ani be labulo landilale me ya lonko ba sambala na député bumbara pour ce korsiro ka kalan labulo me ya lonko wolel be giber kala ni na ta koda wa fo la Gambia e ko nina ta nyim fanala nyim akelo molka register kelo ko dron ko ni mobala biti ko londla e ko ma luwa baraka ma man traje me yalon ko asikrosirol ke pour ka aje ko luwa lu satina men be wafro nyin ke kan e war men be sandro nyin ke kan e kana boy wara munasi kantandino e kibar bonda men safe wala mu fore ala newspaper de bado ngene mu kibaro de men frata me tamena ka futan dalma na be tata ko ma solo no la ninga fa ma fo kun saunda al salona harmadi ana so damal mu annal badi malamin maram dol ka kiyam samba fulani mbara fanya tondo. Assalamu alaikum badingulu.
Thank you, listeners. That was the end of tonight's news review and commentary from the Mamos team.
Mamos media, Atlanta Modebe, Alafu Mamos. Mamos media, Walanata Modebe, Alafu Mamos. Television on the radio, La Carola, you let the Jetabi, Molka, you the winning. Multimedia, Africa, and in diaspora. Atlanta Modebe.